Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. So my name's Brian Love. I am the Digital Teaching, Learning and Innovation Lead at City College Plymouth. And I want to do a big thank you to the TeacherMatic team for inviting me today to speak about and share our kind of TeacherMatic journey here at City College Plymouth. So I'm really hoping is that everyone kind of get an idea of how we've implemented TeacherMatic, but also maybe convince a few people if you're on the fence about it, if you've not actually purchased into TeacherMatic, to kind of give you a couple of tips, a couple of tricks on how to really maximize your use of it. So before we begin, just want to sort of set the scene a little bit. So we are a Google reference college in the southwest of England. We have around 12,000 students, so we're a fairly large organization for where we are in the country. So I oversee the college's digital learning quarter team. So if I ever say DLQ, I'm referring to that team. And they're ultimately at the heart of the college's kind of defined digital strategy. Ultimately, our role is to support as well as resource the use of technology as well as digital tools within teaching practices. So we work quite closely with our quality of education team as well as our learning and teaching teams to kind of bring technology and really explore how it can be used. So last year, we had the honor of winning the TeacherMatic Gold Organization Award. So massive thank you for that one again. But in addition to that, this year, we've also won the JISC-sponsored Beacon Award for the effective use of digital technology in FE. And that was due to the work that we've done in creating sort of no-code app development, using AI to kind of assist and support our staff with their own professional as well as pedagogical development. And I kind of bring these things up because ultimately we're very much a digital-first college. We're always looking for ways in which we can leverage technology within education, and we're always looking for ways in which we can kind of introduce technology in a safe and appropriate way. And that really brings us into TeacherMatic, because we were already exploring artificial intelligence at the time and kind of looking at how is it going to impact education? What is that going to look like? And we had already started to explore a couple of topics, things like use cases, how might AI be used within education itself, ethical considerations and concerns that we had around that, as well as data concerns. And so when we were looking at AI, ultimately one of the things that myself and my team were doing was looking for what is going to be our platform. What are we going to go with in terms of introducing AI in a safe way to the college? And we ultimately came up with 3 key criteria that we wanted from our AI solution. I say 3, it's actually 4, because we also wanted it to be UK based as much as possible. But the 3 criteria we had was, first and foremost, it had to be a good foundation as an AI tool for our staff and our students, regardless of their ability or their exposure to AI. We didn't want to make any assumptions about anybody's ability or capabilities with the technology. And ultimately, we didn't want something that was going to require a heavy amount of prompt engineering or very in-depth technical knowledge to really get started with it and be able to get beneficial results. What we wanted for our staff was a tool that was nice and easy, that they could get their teeth into from day one. Similarly, it had to really save time and reduce workload, or allow for much more personalized learning opportunities. It had to be something that, you know, could take away from the workload, take away from the admin of our staff. And the final one for us was it had to be data compliant. It had to be reliable, and it had to be a safe option for our needs within education. We wanted something that ultimately aligned itself to our sector as much as possible, rather than a generic kind of offering. So with all of that kind of aware to us, what we wanted to sort of also acknowledge was that unless we actually brought in an AI platform a lot of our staff might start to explore their own options. And depending on what their understanding of GDPR, there could be concerns there as well. So we ultimately wanted to have a solution in place. We didn't want to leave it in a kind of nebulous zone for our staff to explore it themselves. And that's ultimately where TeacherMatic came in, because we saw it at DigiFest. And for us, it just seemed like the logical answer to all of those questions. It fit all of those needs. It fit all of those criteria. So we just started to pursue it as our preferred solution in terms of AI. So Peter, you might actually remember the initial call that we set up with yourselves, and I kind of led you on a little bit.
I do.
Fantastic. You might remember I kind of led you on a little bit. I kind of I had you believe that it was just me and you on the call for the entire thing up until the end. When I then turned the camera on and revealed that actually what you had been doing, Peter, was selling your product to our executive leadership team, but also all of our curriculum leaders as well. It was a little bit of a gamble on my side of things, but I thought ultimately they need to be able to see it. They need to see what it's going to do for our staff. And I thought, who's better to do that than TeacherMatic themselves? So thankfully, all of our leadership team were incredibly impressed with what they saw. And so I was then given a bit of funding in order to be able to get enough licenses for 125 staff across all of our curriculum areas. So we started fairly large straight out the gate. Now, in order to support those staff, myself and my team started to implement sort of weekly support sessions and workshops. And that was ultimately to help these members of staff kind of introduce TeacherMatic to their practice, share best practice, get an idea of how are they going to use this new tool. And so from there, we encourage the sharing of best practice amongst these members of staff. We started to champion those best use cases, such as things like the feedback generator, but also things like the use of smart targets generator. And that was actually one of our kind of really preferred areas at first, because at the time we had had feedback around the smart targets and the target setting within the college that it wasn't up to scratch. So that was an area that we really explored quite early with our staff. And what it enabled staff to do, as I'll show you in a moment, is spend more time with students rather than filling out ILP sort of data and sheets. In addition to those things, my team also conducted a termly survey. We still do this with all of the staff that are involved. We've got about 180 staff who are currently on TeacherMatic now. And what we would do with that survey is use the data from it to focus what our internal support offer looked like for staff, and also kind of guide the discussion in those weekly support sessions and workshops that we still have. So that brings us quite nicely on to looking at some of the sort of feedback that we've got. So I got this lovely video from one of my colleagues named Jasmine Airy, sort of discussing her use of TeacherMatic, and I'm hoping the sound comes through.
So far, I've been using TeacherMatic to help with a lot of the admin tasks. One of the tools I've really liked on it is it can initially make slides for people, but what's really helpful is that it can start off with a baseline. So for difficult tasks that I find, like starting with a lesson, it provides a template for everything. TeacherMatic has helped streamline tasks because it can really help with things like smart targets. So during tutorial, TeacherMatic you can put in the information that a student is relaying to you, and it will really help with that structure, which I sometimes get caught up on. So it means that those tasks are kind of sped up a little bit more, which then means that you can spend time actually talking to the student about tutorial needs, bonding with them, addressing their needs rather than focusing on more admin tasks. I've noticed a change in students in terms of tutorials. So for one-to-ones last year, I admittedly spent a lot of time working on those SMART targets, and that meant maybe the quality of our conversations were lower. Or because I'm trying to juggle tasks at once, I'm trying to write a SMART target, I'm not focused on what they're saying. So by using it in a tutorial one-on-one setting, taking that information, popping it into TeacherMatic, and having it spit out a SMART target means that you're more present in the conversation, which obviously means the student feels supported.
So hopefully, as everyone can kind of see from Jasmine's sort of lovely example there, TeacherMatic really embodies for us two of the core purposes of technology within education. The first one is it has to be able to make things easier. And then secondly, it also has to be able to allow for much more personalized learning opportunities. By using TeacherMatic and outsourcing some of the doing of a task, Jasmine, as well as other staff at the college, are able to then spend more time doing what actually matters, helping our students develop to meet their potential.
So far.
So, in terms of stats from our surveys, we found that staff overall sort of confidence with using AI, as well as discussing use of AI with their students, rose after we brought TeacherMatic into the organization. So we benchmarked it at that start at around 58.8% of our staff were confident with the use of AI and confident with having those discussions. And then that rose to 81.5%, sorry, 0.2%. I've got it wrong on the slide there. At the end of term one of this academic year. Similarly, sort of as a result of that sort of growth in confidence, there was also an increase in the engagement with AI tools in general over that same period. So when we benchmarked it, we asked staff, who's using AI tools? What does that look like? Only 43.8% of staff said they were. That's now risen to 59.3%. And then the big sort of stats in terms of time saving. So I should say first and foremost, all of our staff who we've surveyed have said that TeacherMatic has saved them time within their workload. 82% have stated that it saved them somewhere between 1 and 4 hours a week. 10% have said that it saved them somewhere between 5 and 9 hours a week. And then 8% have said that it saved them over 10 hours per week. What we found is that, especially for newer members of staff, TeacherMatic supported them not with just the adoption of AI tools within their teaching toolkit, but also gave them a really good first draft for all of their resources. And particularly for new members of staff, especially if they may start in the middle of the academic year, that was an absolute lifeline for them. It meant they had something very quickly that they could start to break out into the classroom with. And it would be to nobody's sort of surprise that these sort of big figures at the bottom were mainly our new staff who were reporting that. So that brings me kind of towards the end of our presentation here. But before I finish up, I just wanted to kind of give some of our top tips and best practices that we found, which really kind of fed into our success with TeacherMatic. The first one is to find your champions. Really empower your staff, especially, staff like Jasmine, for example, who are going to be confident to share how they're using TeacherMatic, share its impact that it's having on their practice, as well as support their peers. From there, promote it. Use your internal channels to share those success stories, highlight the benefits, and really amplify that message with your champions. I think it's also really important here to be authentic, highlight the limitations of the technology so it's not being seen as a silver bullet, because then if things do go wrong, staff will disengage from it. They'll think that there's a level of disingenuity to your message. From there, make sure that you are establishing a regular form of support for staff, whether it's a weekly session, an online space to share best practice, tech exposés, whatever your support, whatever form your support takes. Make sure that it works for your organization and you're setting yourself up as well as possible. And then finally, remember the Pareto principle. So if you're not familiar with it, it's the idea that 80% of the value of anything that you do comes from 20% of what you actually did. Personally, I find AI and sort of AI tools in general really capture this idea really well, because by allowing AI to do the bulk of the work, the 80%, in creating that first draft, we're freeing ourselves up to do 20% of the task that actually adds that value. You know, that 80% value coming from 20% of what we do, allowing this to do the first draft really builds that in as a point. So that's me all finished. Any questions, comments, or concerns?